Head coach Kristin Vesely is out in Houston Cougars softball. Some are already calling it the greatest day in recent memory of Houston Cougar program. We got some guests on to help us break it down.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, to the everydayers out there. Appreciate you guys first listen each and every day. The news of the day that we're getting to very quickly is that Kristin Vesely is out as the Houston Cougars women's softball coach. We're going to talk some about what could come next and what this means about Eddie Nuñez as an AD in his first year at Houston. But first, let's introduce Dustin and Sam as we get into this full-heartedly. Show, I should point out, is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We got more on that fun later, because this fun, Dustin, Sam, is a big, big change in the softball program. Kristin Vesely is out, and I actually don't know who I want to start with first here, but I want to know what was like the first, this is a PG program, what was the first thing you said when you got the tweet ding on your phone?
Yeah, Sam actually, the first notification I got was Sam hitting up me and Bobby in the group chat, and I think since we're keeping it PG, I'll just say finally. Finally was the word I can repeat here. Finally. Yeah, just that word a lot with some other spiciness thrown around.
Sam, you started this off then. What did you say when you first saw it? You had to forward it too.
We have a running a joke between us as co-hosts, as just friends outside, because we've been friends a lot longer than we've been co-hosts. Is like, are you familiar? I'm sure you are, Parker. Spoonerisms, like when you mix up the two, and like,
yeah.
This is a little, as I say, this is a little more glib than I would generally be on this topic, but I just sent to the group chat that Bobby, Dustin, and myself are in, Kristin Vesely. And that was the way that Dustin found out specifically that UVH was making a softball. And it was a real, it honestly, it was a laugh to keep from crying moment. Like, cause there's never a day that I've regretted us doing this story, but we said it kind of in the intro to the episode we just dropped on this topic, because I think we figured it deserved its own episode. I don't think I've had a U of H sports story stick with me the way. Like, obviously, I spent a lot of waking moments thinking about more positive, like Kelvin Sampson, like men's basketball teams during the season. Like, oh man, like I'm thinking about the next couple of games. If there's a road trip I'm going to, I'm thinking about that. If they're, NCAA tournaments coming up, I'm thinking about that. The way this story just lived, I'd be at an idle moment at work, and this story would come, it would come to my mind. Like, whether it's like second guessing, like should I have done more of this, or like could I do this? It just like it lived with me in a way that no other U of H story has.
Well, and so we could hit on the field product, bottom of the Big 12 2 years in a row, really struggling as a program, and frankly, like many sports, in a part of the country that is rich with softball players. Like it should not be hard. It might be hard to compete with some of the top dollar programs in the world, but just to field a competent product frankly should be enticing to whoever the next coach is. But that's not really the whole story here. Dustin, Sam, you are a part of Scott and Holman breaking some off the field news. I guess it's been a year. It's been a year ago at this point. Like, it's been a while, and frankly, it took this long to happen. But can one of you dive in the TLDR, if someone is tuning this in, is like, what are you talking about softball for, Parker? The off the field stuff was far more egregious than the on the field product, which was, again, bottom of the Big 12.
Yeah, so we had, at the end of the last softball season, we started having some softball current and former players reach out to us. And we are not a journalistic podcast. We've never pretended to be that. We've always said, hey, we're fans reacting as fans, and reading the journalist work like everybody else. But we just kept having these players telling us all of these really bad experiences that they had with Coach Vesely and being part of the program, and staffers as well reached out and confirmed the same things. And some of the main lowlights, I guess you would call them, were during the entire 2024 season, there was a player on the team who notably was taking a gun with her on team road trips, and on multiple occasions threatened multiple teammates with it. Players went to Coach Vesely, said they didn't feel safe, and Coach Vesely told them that their opinions didn't matter and she wasn't going to do anything about it. We reached out to the university about if that had happened. They said they had done an investigation that involved UHPD. All the players we talked to who were there when the alleged incident happened said they had never spoken to anyone with UHPD. There are also players who, lots of players reached out to describe being forced to play through injuries, just having, their mental and physical health diagnoses shared against their will by Coach Vesely to other individuals, and just being mocked for the, things that they had shared with her in confidence, things like that. A player that was forcibly outed to her family, essentially via threat by Coach Vesely, and just players being denied food that the team nutritionist was like, hey, they were in a bus for 3 hours and then had a practice for 2 hours. We need to give them like food and snacks, and Coach Vesely overruling the team nutritionist, denying the players food. Just all kinds of crazy nonsense like that. I'm probably forgetting some of it. I feel like I've kind of walked down a lot of pretty indefensible stuff. But Sam, you want to help me out with some of the other stuff I'm sure I forgot just now?
I think you hit the key points. I think the one thing I would add, and this wasn't the most salacious of the stuff, but there's a lot of petty tyrant stuff. Like, Parker, you've coached. Like, stuff that, to me, someone who's never coached admittedly in his life, who's played a lot of sports, I've been coached a lot in my life, but I have never held the occupation. Stuff that just seems so counter to like your goal of team building, your goal of getting a bunch of young men or women to work together through the sport to achieve a common goal, to be the best you can be. And it was just so apparent just from all the petty tyrant stuff and all the, like you couldn't pass a one size fits all. This was confirmed by a bunch of different people, because this was one of those ones that I wouldn't say it was unbelievable, Dustin, when we first got told to us, but like, it was one of those, I've got to make sure like this is something that like actually happened. And that the one size fits all condition test, if you don't pass it, you can't put your stuff in a locker. That's just one small thing of many, and certainly not the most important thing that we reported. But how are you getting the best out of your players if that's the kind of environment that you're in? And that seems like a small thing, but that really stuck out to me. Just like the layers of it, the insanity of having a one size fits all conditioning test, the insanity of having the penalty be like, you don't get to have a locker. Like, come on, these are Division I athletes here. Like, what are we doing?
And
like, I don't know. Yeah.
There's some aspects of this that, like, obviously potentially violence and threat, like that's all its own level. There's also some of this, though, like the nutritionist bit. I was going to mention the conditioning because that stuck out with me from a year ago, where like, you don't want your first third baseman, you don't want them to be the same kind of athlete as your center fielder. Like, that doesn't make any sense from a logical perspective. And I also so athletics is typically the porch of a university. And I would argue that for the University of Houston, the basketball program has the porch, the furniture, the windows, the thing going on through the background. Like, you want it to be everything, right? But if Alan Bishop walked up to Kelvin Sampson after a bus ride and practice said, hey, we need to get these guys some food, Kelvin would say, what restaurant? Like, it wouldn't be a question, right? I don't know how you can think that would help the performance, let alone just building a toxic culture here. And y'all presented this, and again, I appreciate Dustin as someone who's also not a formal journalist by any stretch, presented this when it hit you because you had to get it. Someone had to be talking about this. What was the immediate, because it's taken a year now, we only are now doing the she's fired episode, or she didn't technically, she's just not going to be renewed, right? What was the year after that like? Because it's all out there at that point.
Yeah, it was a year of a lot of, I mean, in the immediate aftermath of putting it out, it was just this outpouring of other players that, we hadn't even been able to reach out to, kind of immediately reach out saying, hey, thank you for doing this, and just be happy that someone was finally saying something. But then it was, it was a couple weeks afterwards, Chris Pesman got fired, and immediately had some people going like, was that you? No, I think that was a money thing. I don't think that had too much to do with us. But then with, immediately in the aftermath, publishing, waiting to see if there's going to be any consequences, or if any kind of quote unquote reputable journalist was going to really reach out to us and be like, hey, can we talk to any of these players? Because we had plenty of players in that moment. We're ready to talk to people, and just didn't really have anyone kind of reach out and be like, hey, can I talk to these people and run this? Which we would have been thrilled. And maybe that's just, they don't want to step on our toes or whatever. I don't know. But just, we would have been thrilled to have to hand the baton off to a quote unquote reputable journalist. Didn't see that happen. Would have been thrilled to see Kristin Vesely get fired, lose her job, kind of expecting something might happen. And then in the moment that we first reported, there was also some very murky stuff out there about her contract, where her contract was officially up, but then they had signed this super secret extension a year before.
We put in our open records request last July, but early in July, and it got fulfilled with the most recent contract expiring last July. And then we found out at the end of July, her and Pesman had signed something in May of 2023, and it hadn't gotten executed by the university until then, and thus not, nothing that screams nothing that's technically illegal there, but nothing that's just you're real proud of this decision. This definitely doesn't seem like the normal way you would go about this, even in the weirdness of coaching contracts. Sorry.
Yeah. The whole what was going on with their contract thing was very strange. I'm still baffled as to what was going on there.
You mentioned Pesman in the contract, and frankly, I might have been I don't even remember if I was one of the people that DM'd asking, was that y'all when Pesman got the axe? Felt fairly suddenly in the summer of, was that 24? But I do want to talk about how his replacement didn't do this immediately, but also didn't waste a whole lot of time in just 1 second. But first, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Even if the Houston Rockets are playing, I promise we're in full swing. Daily, nightly highlights, crazy stories, big-time comebacks, can't miss moments, and whether it's that game-winning shot or whatever you want to get on the action, you can now with FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off live, player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever before to play smart and win big. I love how quickly things get back to you after the games wrap up. I love the $200 back in bonus bets you get if that first $5 bet hits. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Ainsworth joined by the Scott and Holman folks, Dustin and Sam, to talk about the latest in the softball program. We mentioned that Pesman had this super secret extension for the softball coach, Vesely. And I think it speaks to a lot of what Nuñez is trying to do, that shortly after their first season ends, he's like, hey, you're not coming back, whether that's Vesely or Huey or whomever, right? He seems to be taking names and going through these kind of things fairly quickly, not giving a whole lot of second, third chances. He wants to move the program and the department in a very specific direction. I don't know which of y'all is running the Twitter account and the Blue Sky account, but I would point out that I thought it was a poignant point that someone put, pointing at Sam for the audio audience, that, this is a good day for the program. It's 12 months late. How do you weigh that Nuñez waited until May 13th or the fact that he got it done as soon as his first softball season in office was over? What's the balancing act of that look like? Because I kind of see both sides of it being decisive one season and also slow. It's May. This was last May and June.
I'll preface it with two things. One, I don't it's entirely possible. I don't know if I would say it's probable, but it's entirely possible. Someone went above Nuñez's head was just like, hey, this is what's going on here. It's not a great situation, but we are so unbelievably cash strapped that we need to just let this play out. Unless these coaches way underperform or way overperform, easy chances you get to make your hire here, but we don't want to in a particularly cash poor period for the school, make these changes sooner. Or in the case of Huey, which we never, once it was clear they were bringing him back, I don't think we were advocating for that to happen in August, because at that point you're way into the off season. So I don't know. I don't know.
And to be fair to Huey, his problems were just on the floor. People loved Huey.
Correctly.
It was just the on the floor product.
Yeah. Glad I get one more chance to stay in the public sphere. That great guy. Had him on the pod and was genuinely one of the 2 or 3 nicest human beings we've ever had on our show. So I don't know that situation. I don't know exactly whether it was just an absolute mandate from above Nuñez's head. You can't move here. until the contract's going to be up into the season. Then you get your chance to make your hire. We can wash our hands of this. I would just say that's kind of the easy way out. I think the harder decision and the correct decision would have been to actually honestly investigate this, which I don't think we have any indication, Dustin, that's ever happened. Like, let's say we really missed the mark here and only like 40% of the stuff that we talked about was genuinely true. That, I don't know, there's some big thing against Kristin Vesely out there. 40% of this being true is so far beyond the pale of what needed to like happen. Not to mention the fact that the on-field results have been terrible for 5 years running. Like this, even in a weird time in the offseason, this should have been the easiest firing for cause, and U of H saved a few bucks. I feel great about it. And also just, I don't feel, but more than the time it's taken between now and then, what I don't feel great about is I don't think anyone over on Cullen Boulevard's actually reckoned with what this means. And that more than any timetable is what the kind of unsatisfying takeaway I have on what is still undeniably, I think, a good day, a day we're happy about. And I think largely, like Eddie Nuñez has finally done what his predecessor would absolutely not do and moved on from underachieving coaches. Like, I do appreciate that, even if some things about this specific story stick in my craw. Sorry, Dustin.
I was just going to say, like, I think for the reasons you said, it's hard to fully condemn Nuñez for not making a move because you don't know what the situation was. But it's just, I have a hard time believing he didn't know something was up. And I'm not sounding cocky, like, I can't believe he didn't listen to our podcast or whatever and came to the same conclusion as
How
us.
dare you?
How dare you? But we know that several players went to the administration when Pesman was there and raised these concerns. So all you had to do was ask around and know that, like, hey, don't take it from us. Take it from the players who literally went to administration and said, hey, some crazy stuff went down. We need to talk about this, and we need to talk about Kirstin Vesely being the coach here. But also, I give him basically zero credit for making a move now. Her contract was up and the team was terrible. Like, if you're a new athletic director and you have a coach whose contract is up and the team has been very bad for 6 years in a row, that's the easiest slam dunk decision you get. I think, and I give Chris Pesman basically zero credit for anything now at this point, given the way he handled that whole situation. I think Chris Pesman would have made a move. That's how obvious it was. I think Chris Pesman would have moved on for Ron Huey and Kirstin Vesely. Their contracts are up and the team had been terrible for forever. So I don't give him too much credit for the move. I give him a ton of credit for pulling Matthew Mitchell for our women's basketball coach, because that is a grand slam of a hire that I'm thrilled about. And, the soccer coach I like, and hopefully we have a softball coach here coming up that is another good hire. So I'll give him credit for that. But just the fact that he made a move from Kirstin Vesely, there was, you would have to be absolutely deranged to have given her an extension at this point, regardless of whether you believe anything that we said in our reporting or not.
Just counterpoint.
I was going to say, the only thing I would add to that before I want to hear that counter is I would almost feel like once Huey got told he's not coming back, they bring in a great coach in Mitchell, like you mentioned. Like that's for those that know, like 2-time SEC coach of the year, like big deal when he was at Kentucky. But Huey, again, was just the on the court stuff, not the off the court stuff. Great person. And you could almost argue that this past season of on the court stuff was understandable because of how much chaos is happening in that roster. Like, it almost felt like he felt bad for the guy that was the way he went out. Whereas, again, this softball program doesn't have those kind of crutches to fall onto. But Sam, you've got a counterpoint. I'm anxious here.
They already got one extension from Chris Pesman. What makes you think that? Like, I mean, again, like the secret 2023 one, but that wasn't to be signed until the next summer, was pretty insane. So I don't know. I wouldn't have given Nuñez's predecessor that much. I don't disagree too much, but like
I may be wrong about Pesman, but 99.99% of potential Pesman replacements would have come in and relieved Huey and Vesely of their jobs the first year.
Yeah,
I just had like this funny visual of like it's another super secret extension, and we just don't hear anything until they go up for first pitch. Like, wait a second, we're calling P's and C's, and we don't know it.
The longer, again, like as the days went on, like this wasn't that long of a delay between the end of the season, which was last Wednesday night, and today, like less than a week. And I think graduation, from our understanding, was at least part of the delay there. But as each day went on, and there wasn't, like, if we had gone through Friday and there hadn't been any kind of announcement here, I think we would be texting each other like, are they really going to like keep this coach? Like, logic would tell you no, but logic would have told you this coach shouldn't have been here the last 2 or 3 seasons. Like, there's still the relief. I have to remind myself this is still This is still a net good. This is still the best day that U of H and its softball program has had in a while.
Well, and I want to talk about the next great day in that program will be in a second. Park Rangers Locked On Coogs. You're joined by Dustin and Sam of the Scott and Holman podcast. And one thing that I believe I've told you both, and I definitely have put it on this channel and on social media, I appreciate how deeply you guys dive into like every sport. It is anything happening in the third ward, I feel like, not just on campus even. It is very well and thoroughly covered. And that includes the dark days of softball. And as we're sitting here looking to replace the softball coach and move forward, Sam, you said that it's a good day, greatest day in a while for the softball program because they're moving on and leaving this in the past. The next big one's going to be hiring the next coach, right? And I don't know who that's going to be, but we've seen Eddie make a few moves here that indicate he's going to swing big. And he might not get it, but we know that that's probably going to be at least attempted. And I wonder, first of all, in the grand scheme of softball, I would start looking at like some of the top tier program rosters. I'd imagine like UT and Oklahoma have people from the state of Texas that could have some tie to the city of Houston if I looked hard enough. I don't know that off the top of my head. Sam, do you have a name? We can all, but I want to get to qualities because I want to say like how do we shape this program? But who can fill in this rebuilding project?
One general quality I really want in this coach, because I don't think this is the Big 12's most resource efficient softball program, and you have a lot working with you just by virtue of, I think, good team facility, good location, city of Houston. Even if you're getting out of state recruits, there's a good chance you're playing right away for a lot of the prep softball recruits out there and transfer portal opportunities there as well. You still need to have someone who has been able to work, I think, on a tight budget, who's been able to work. You need somebody who knows how to win with not a top of the Big 12 budget. I think that's very important here. From what we've been told, weren't given much more specifics beyond this, but like, I think associate head coach at a Power 4 program, so we're told, which tells me looking at assistants. Don't know how I feel about that, though. I do know a lot of the smaller college head coaches who U of H ultimately didn't hire because they decided to stick with Kristin Vesely several years too long. A lot of them aren't out there anymore. So I guess I kind of see where that's going, but I think the most important thing for me, they don't have someone who's coming here who's used to being like a real Tiffany program. Like you're going to need to build something here. It's probably going to be a mostly new roster. It almost goes without saying, can't believe I've gone this long as saying this, but somebody who their players actually want to go to battle for them. Their players will, like, you go talk to the players from the last few schools they've been at, that they would go to war for this person.
Yeah, can we just go sunk cost? A decent person the kids like, yes. I think is like very basic. Like we're all going to say that part. And then
yeah. So bullet point A, or unimpeachable character. Let's start with that. Someone that just everyone raves about. No, I mean, I know, I've also kind of seen the P4 assistant thing. I'm hoping that's wrong. I've realized since we started doing our podcast that last year when I thought maybe Vesely was going to get fired, I started looking around, and my candidate I liked then is actually still around, and that's James Landrenau at McNeese State.
Is he still McNeese?
He's still at McNeese. I just Googled
it. I don't know why I thought someone had hired him. My bad.
Yeah, so James Landrenau, McNeese State, has been the head coach there for, I think, like 13 years or so, for quite a while. Turned them into a very respectable mid-major program that's given lots of, bigger conference programs a tough time, including U of H over the years. So if you want to talk about a guy that has had to figure out how to win and not had a ton of resources, McNeese does like their softball relative to other sports, at McNeese, but it's still – I'm sure the money going from the Southlands to, Houston, its full Big 12 rev share next year is going to be a pretty significant step up. So I think that's someone that has had to win on a budget and could do it and could replicate it at U of H. I think it's worth pointing out that, whoever we hire will be the third head coach in program history. It hasn't been around that long. And, Kyla Holt and Vesely was there for 9 years. Kyla Hollis was there for longer than that before that. Kyla Hollis won big in Conference USA and the American. So, I mean, it's not the most resource program in the Big 12, but there's certainly a history of success in this program. Vesely's the only coach that's ever not had his team consistently at least pretty good. So I would love to see someone that can find some pitchers for us, because pitching has been an absolute nightmare for the last several years. And I think it could be that person is James Landrenau, McNeese State. That's my call.
But one thing I like about McNeese or any smaller program in the region is obviously you'd think that they could only do better with more resources, and you hope Houston can offer them, even if it's not the highest on our totem pole, it would theoretically be a bigger deal than where they're at. I just feel like you start this program by recruiting the region and finding girls in the area that, as Sam mentioned, want to come to the city of Houston, or maybe want, if they're from the city, want to stay in Houston. They've got family here, et cetera, and their family at their games. Because honestly, being 4-18 this year, bottom of the Big 12 2 years in a row, indicates that even just getting a consistently great Houston area team would propel you up a few more wins. It might not get you quite to double digits. I don't know, but it would be a good place to start.
I do think it is more national in some ways, like I would say the golden years of Cougar softball. I can think of just a couple off the top of my head. Dustin, Southern California recruit Coogs from there, though. Our best pitcher was a Oklahoma State transfer who was originally from the Houston area and came back home. So yes, you're recruiting very differently in 2025 than you would be in 2008, 2009, 2010, the years that Dustin and I are kind of alluding to as the program's golden years. And our issue has never been with this program, well, why aren't we hosting a regional every year? Just 5 straight seasons of not having even above 500 record. Come on. I know this program isn't resourced, but this program absolutely should be more than the sum of the parts that we've seen.
Yeah, I think with the bat and ball sports, you definitely want to have that. You definitely want to have that Southern California, secondary pipeline, if you will, just because there's, in the way that Houston is kind of one of, maybe the pipeline, or Texas maybe kind of the pipeline for football. It's kind of Southern California with the bat and ball sports. So that wouldn't hurt. Maybe, weird X factor here also is that Kirstin Vesely's wife is a very influential, to our understanding, softball coach in the Houston area. So that may be an X factor for why Houston is trying to play nice with Vesely, is they would love her wife to not be saying bad things about us as a university to the young women that are playing for her in the future. So hopefully that doesn't hinder Houston's ability to recruit in the area. We'll maybe see how that goes going forward. But
so we're going to burn that bridge for them, is what I mean.
Yes, that's what we're doing. We're just making things hard for Houston in recruiting.
It's good. There's the coach actually that Dustin and I have had the most acrimony each other over was Tom Penders, the former U of H men's basketball coach, who I now, with many years of hindsight, believe was absolutely getting us the max he could have done with our not very good resources. But the man just would not recruit Houston area players, just Houston area high school players, not happening, just would not, on principle almost. And that's what we're condemning, I guess, the new softball coach to, is a Tom Penders relationship with Houston Prep softball. In all seriousness, I hope not, but that's definitely an important thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Dustin.
Houston's got a lot of, by my count, it's more than half the roster were sophomores or freshmen last year. Obviously, they came to play for one coach and program. The goal would be to improve that coach and program. You think that's a good thing to them. Would the goal be, given the previous culture, to kind of keep those underclassmen and build with them? Is it to completely strip this thing down and start over?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's some good hitters there. Quite frankly, I don't think I think the new coach would absolutely love to be able to retain Brooke Wells. I don't think the new coach is going to be able to retain Brooke Wells, but I also don't think Kristin Vesely, in a universe where she gets another undeserved contract extension, retains Brooke Wells, because like any sport, softball has big hitters. Softball doesn't have the amount of teams want to throw an NAL bag as men's basketball or football, certainly. But I mean, Stanford's National Player of the Year pitcher went to Texas Tech, and it's not because she loves Lubbock in winter. Texas Tech made it very much worth Nigeri Kennedy's while to do that. I don't think Brooke Wells would have got a Nigeri Kennedy level bag, but I think a good freshman season in the Big 12, I think some SEC programs would have been sniffing around and will be sniffing around, or a more resourced Big 12 program, like a Baylor type program. It seems like Baylor's gotten a lot of the players that Kristin Vesely somehow couldn't figure out how to win with. So could be the case here. I would want to, I don't think that we haven't heard anything bad about the players on this year's team. I wouldn't on principle be I want them to just tell everyone to take a hike. But also, like, this team hasn't pitched well in a while, so I think you probably have to have some tough conversations there. Like, U of H has been among the 50 worst teams in the country the last few seasons at pitching. As much as I do think there are coaching problems there also is probably some talent identification as well. So I don't think I'd run players out on principle, but
yeah, no, absolutely. I kind of totally agree with what Sam said. There's definitely some young hitters on this roster that you'd love to keep around for next year if they're open to that, if they're open to listening to the next coach and seeing if they want to stay in school. And you know, even a lot of the players who had ill will towards Vesely expressed a lot of positive thoughts towards the institution of the University of Houston as a whole. So I think it's entirely possible that there's some talented young hitters. So the pitching staff probably needs to restart fresh. Luckily, you only need like 2 or 3 pitchers, and you can kind of rebuild the pitching staff pretty quickly if you can. But it's finding those pitchers, as Vesely knows, that is the difficult thing to do. So, would love to see some of the young hitters, Brooke Wells in particular, who just had a massive freshman season. Would love to see them stick around and listen to the new coach and hear that pitch for staying around. But if losing all of them is what it means, then that's fine. You're gonna have to start fresh with a lot of this anyway. So.
That's Dustin and Sam, Scott and 2/3, I should say, of Scott and Holman podcasts. I'm still calling you a third, Dustin. I don't know what your actual proportion is. We're going to give you a third.
We'll say a third.
If you want more things, again, they cover the diamond, the track, all year round, every sport, and do it again very thoroughly every week. Go check them out on the Scott and Holman podcast. They have their own reaction episode, which might not be PG. I don't know. I'm not going to.
It is not. I promise you it is not.
So go check that out if you want some more. If you want something else from Locked On, I'm recommending Locked On College Basketball because the chaos of college basketball in May has gotten ridiculous. Andy and I are covering it each and every day over there. Locked On Coogs, the primary of the Locked On podcast. Now we have your team every day. Go Coogs.